Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It's Friday, December 17th, 2021. I'm Andrew Hanson alongside Josh Crash Davis. We've got the Week 15 NFL Main Slate to break down. And Josh, there's no news going on, no player news, team news, games being moved around, just a regular old slate.
Yeah, ho-hum business as usual, right? We're just rolling through here.
2021, classic. 2 games moved. So now we have a 9-game slate. And not only do we have a 9-game slate, but it's unique in that 5 of the 9 games have really big spreads, over 9.5 or more.
Yeah.
On more than half the games. We only have 2 totals over 45. We don't have any over 50. 6 early games, 3 late games. It's just a very condensed, potentially low-scoring slate.
Yeah.
So, we have to adjust and we have to make the most of it. I kind of like shorter slates like this, but there aren't a ton of great plays. The player pool is a little bit tight for me this week. So let's go through it. What we're going to do this week is we're going to go back to position by position. We've been previewing 4 key games per week for a while, and we've done well with that. But because of the shortened slate, this is how we're going to attack it and get everybody ready to just build those lineups position by position. So let's look at quarterback. Josh, do you have a pay-up option you like this week?
Yeah, I'm going to be going back to Aaron Rodgers. He's 7,500 on DraftKings. Since coming back from COVID, he's been on a tear. He had a good game against the Vikings and then followed it up with another good game against the Rams. And then last week had another good game against the Bears. He had 36, 29, and 32 DraftKings points in those games. The Ravens are dealing with a lot of injuries in their secondary, and they've been pretty solid against the run this year. So I think that this is going to be a pass funnel game for Rodgers. So he's going to be throwing up against that banged-up secondary all day long. They've allowed the second most passing yards per game with 266.1. And Pro Football Focus, for some reason, has him projected as their 11th highest scoring quarterback this week. I think that's way too low. I think he's going to be more of like a top 3 quarterback.
Yeah, that seems a little bit low to me as well. I have a lot of interest in Rodgers this week for the reasons you mentioned. He's really been on a roll, and Baltimore really is a team that you want to pass against instead of running it. So fire up Rodgers. If you don't, a pay-up option that I'm looking at is Kyler Murray. And they've got a probably even better matchup against Detroit. But as 13-point favorites, this is always the concern. How do they score? Do they just run it in because Detroit has a terrible run defense? We know that Kyler can run it in himself, so that helps a little bit there. We know he's motivated after that loss to the Rams where he put up big yardage, 383. Through the air. He ran for 61, but he didn't have any passing touchdowns.
Right.
So he's motivated. They need to get back on track. Big favorites. He should be dominant while he's out there with a regular offense. So he's the other pay-up option I'm looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, and Pro Football Focus agrees. They have him as their highest projected quarterback on this week. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, if we want to get a different build here and go a little bit cheaper, who's your next option?
It's going to be Tua Tagovailoa, 5,700 on DraftKings. He's priced just below Jimmy Garoppolo, who I think could be another popular pick this week. But he has a favorable matchup against the Jets. They've allowed the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. He faced them in Week 11. He had 273 yards passing for 2 touchdowns. He did throw 1 pick, but he had 18.5 DraftKings points. So at 5.7, that's pretty good value there. And if Waddle's out, it could hurt him a little bit, but this would still be a pretty good matchup for him. Pro Football Focus has him projected as their 3rd highest, scoring quarterback on this slate, just behind Kyler Murray and Josh Allen and just ahead of Joe Burrow and Aaron Rodgers. So there's 13 quarterbacks priced above him on DraftKings, and I think you do a lot worse than Tua.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if he's 3rd projected for points, but way down the list in pricing, that's a real nice value if it pays off. And I do see the upside there. Matchup again, you can beat them on the ground or through the air.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Jimmy G. He's the other guy I want to mention here in this mid-tier range, 5,800 on DraftKings. And the 49ers have Atlanta this week. They are one of the big favorites on the slate, 9.5, total of 46.5. We know that Atlanta has a below-average defense, both against the pass and against the run. Jimmy G, historically not a ceiling type of guy, but how about this, Josh? 2 passing touchdowns in 5 of his last 6 games.
Yep.
And no Elijah Mitchell.
Right.
So it can be hard to predict which pass catcher is going to go off for San Fran. But I have a little more faith in the passing offense in general without Mitchell out there. I think they'll turn in that direction a little bit more often. So he's a guy that he's much more on my radar this week than usual because of those factors.
Yeah. In Atlanta, they usually find a way, to lose these kind of games, but they're usually in them for most of the game, so it's good potential there for a shootout, I think. So
Yep, I hear you. Good point. All right, let's hit some running backs here. What's your first target in that department?
It wasn't my initial first target, but especially on FanDuel, Ezekiel Elliott is only 6,700. I mean, that's pretty cheap for a guy that we used to pay, mid 8s for, almost 9 sometimes. He's been a little bit of a funk lately, but this week he's going up against the Giants, who earlier this year he had one of his best games of the year against. In week 5, he had 21 carries for 110 yards and a touchdown for 28 DraftKings points. And we'll have to see if Tony Pollard's going to play. If he doesn't play, then Elliott will be an even better play, I think. But as a low price, especially on FanDuel, I think he's going to be pretty popular. There's 14 running backs priced above him, and Pro Football Focus has him as their 5th highest projected scoring running back. So once again, you're getting good value for that price.
Yeah, I see the attraction there as well. I'm still a little skittish on Zeke with his health. Yes, if Pollard sits again, it helps. But Clement got a bunch of touches last game. Though on the flip side, it is a really good price for Zeke, like you said. So he's, kind of pros and cons for me. The first guy I'm looking at, I want to go a little bit cheaper here at running back if I pay up for Murray or Rodgers. So looking at some of the cheaper running backs, I want to start with James Robinson. And I just think I'm going to have a hard time fading him this week because Carlos Hyde is out. Urban Meyer is out.
Yeah.
So he should get the snappage that he deserves. And, oh, by the way, he's going up against Houston, worst ranked defense in terms of rushing yards allowed per game, 6th best fantasy point matchup for running backs overall, and he's only 5,400 on DraftKings. Now, this is a guy who earlier in the season was getting 18 to 20 touches a game. One of the better running backs in the league when he's healthy. Low price, good matchup. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to fade him.
Yeah, I don't think you can. He's one of my top plays as well. Last year he had no games where he had less than 12 carries. And he's already had 4 with less than 10. So I think what you said about Urban Meyer being out, that's a big deal. And they're going to feature him pretty heavily, I think. I mean, I know I would if I was in their shoes.
Yep. I sure hope they do. Just stay healthy, James. Stay healthy. All right. Who's next for you?
I'm actually looking, if you're looking at FanDuel pricing, I'm actually going to be going to pay up a little bit. He's 8,000 on FanDuel, but he's only 6,400 on DraftKings. It's James Conner. He's, just been very solid this year. Detroit's allowed the 4th most fantasy points to running backs. They're dealing with an injury. Arizona's dealing with an injury to DeAndre Hopkins. So I think Conner will see even a little bit more of a workload. And, we've seen running backs like Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon have big games against Detroit. And just last week, Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams combined to rush for nearly 200 yards and scored 3 touchdowns. So this is a very favorable matchup for Conner. He should probably be playing with a lead most of the game. So I think that's going to favor him as well. Pro Football Focus has him as their 3rd highest projected scoring running back on the slate. and he scored 8 touchdowns in his last 6 games. So, and he even had a season high in targets last Monday night against the Rams with 9 catches for 94 yards on 9 targets. So, tons of work for him.
He is on a big roll, scoring touchdowns, like you said, getting big numbers now in the receiving game as well. I mean, he looked like Murray's trusted target there.
Yeah.
Even a bit downfield. They're not just 3-yard dump offs.
Mm-hmm.
He hit him up the seam for like a 20, 25-yarder.
Yeah.
The only hesitation there is if Chase Edmonds is back, do they finally pull back a little bit on his usage?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Next guy I want to mention here, also a cheap option, D'Onta Foreman, 5,200 on DraftKings.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got Pittsburgh this week, and they are weak against the run, especially lately. Teams have been gouging them.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7 fantasy points overall for the season. And this is a pick'em right now, one of those rare midweek pick'ems, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
43 total here. And Tennessee coming off a shutout win over Jacksonville where they're able to run it and win comfortably. He got 13 carries, scored, and he was the lead back. He also caught 2 balls. So, they are mixing it up with Hilliard.
Mm-hmm.
But he does seem to be the lead guy right now. And I really do like that price.
Yeah. No, I like that play. I mean, Dalvin Cook just ran wild all over Pittsburgh. So that's a good matchup.
Yeah, he really did. And Mixon did before that. So,
yeah.
All right. Before we hit the pass catchers, just want to invite folks to hit that thumbs up button. We'd appreciate that. And if you want to jump in and grab our lineups this weekend, go to dfscoachtalk.com, pick whichever membership you'd like, and we'll invite you into our Discord, give you the NFL lineups, full lineups on FanDuel and Yahoo for your cash contest, your GPP contest, the DraftKings Coaches Clipboard with highlighted core options and then pivots to fill out your roster. And you'll get our basketball lineups as well. Huge night last night for Coach. Won a couple thousand plus. So that was exciting. And again, whichever membership you get, you'll get NBA and NFL lineups right now. So dfscoachtalk.com is where to sign up.
Yep.
All right, Josh, how about some wide receivers? Let's get in the end zone with some of these guys.
Yeah, so let's pair up Aaron Rodgers with Devontae Adams. With Cooper Kupp's game being moved to Thursday, he's become my top wide receiver on the slate now. 8,900 on DraftKings. Like I said earlier, the Ravens are dealing with a ton of injuries in their secondary, and I don't feel like they really have anyone that can match up with Devontae. He has the highest matchup advantage against all defenders this week with a 98.7. So there's really no reason why this shouldn't be one of his bigger games of the year. He's coming off a huge game against Chicago with 10 catches for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I won't be surprised if this is an even bigger game for him this week just because of the matchups. I think that this could be a huge game for Devontae.
Yeah, I like Devontae as well. Next guy for me here is another PPR monster, Deontay Johnson for Pittsburgh. How about 5 straight games with between 10 and 14 targets?
Yeah,
he has really stepped up. Very reliable, dependable. Big Ben's favorite target. And he's got Tennessee this week. It's actually the second best matchup for wide receivers in terms of fantasy points. We think of Tennessee as a strong defense, but that's the way to attack them. And quick passes work, which is Deontay's bread and butter. 7,500 on DraftKings. It's a little bit more than I'd like to pay for him, but I guess that's just the benefit we've had of him being a little bit underpriced here, mid 5K, mid 6K range. This is really where he should be priced with all those targets. So if I go a little cheaper at running back, I think I can squeeze him in.
Yeah, no, I definitely like Deontay Johnson. He's, like you said, he's just been heavily targeted, and he's just kind of gone under the radar, really. He's performing like a top wide receiver, and he's priced, in that almost upper mid-range. So,
all right, excellent. If we pay down a little bit here at the position, where are you looking?
Brandon Ayuk. You could pair him up with your guy Jimmy G. He's 6,300 on DraftKings. He's been a lot more involved in their offense lately. Last week he had a season high 10 targets against Cincinnati, and he scored double-digit DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4 games, going up against an Atlanta defense that has allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. And I think that their rookie standout corner AJ Terrell will be projected to match up with Deebo Samuel. So I think Ayuk will have a more favorable matchup in this game and should be, I hope, lower owned. With these games moving, he may not be as low owned as I was hoping, but hopefully still lower owned.
Yeah, he's really stepped up here in recent weeks. All right, my other wide receiver I'm going to mention here today, AJ Green, going up against Detroit. He's only 4,900 on DraftKings, and I really like how he looked against the Rams. His numbers were strong, 7 for 102, but he looked a little closer to the AJ Green of old to me. And D-Hop is out, as you were referencing early. So you feel a little bit better about the target share. And actually, according to Pro Football Focus, he's got a really strong matchup rating here of 89, one of the highest on the slate. Close behind your man Devontae. Again, strong matchup here in terms of the line, the total. 47.5 doesn't sound amazing, but it's actually the highest on the slate. So I like AJ Green to step up a little bit in Hopkins' absence.
Yeah, he stood out to me a little bit too, how he was looking on Monday night. A lot better than I remember him looking in the last couple of games for sure.
Excellent. All right, let's hit some tight ends, and I'll kick us off here with a pay-up option because you can't get any higher on DraftKings, and that's Kittle at 7,500. Man, you talk about a strong recent performer.
Yeah.
Can he go 3 in a row? He's gone 9 for 181 and 2 scores. And then he followed that up with 13 for 151 in his score these last 2 weeks. I mean, he is just a beast. And he's got Atlanta. It's a slightly above average matchup for tight ends.
Yeah.
Solid favorites here. Makes a lot of sense to me. If you're going to go with Jimmy G to pair these guys up, hope that he at least gets in the end zone again. Maybe he doesn't get 9 or 10 catches, but he's 7 or 8 for 100 yards and a score, and that'll be just fine.
Yeah. He's got Pro Football Focus gave him the highest, which is no surprise, the highest matchup advantage for tight ends. And I believe it was like by a full 20 points, the next guy behind him. So huge matchup advantage for Kittle.
All right. Well, if you're not going to go up to that range, where are you looking?
Yeah, you could save 2,500 and go down to Mike Gesicki, along with Devontae Parker. If Waddle's, out, him and Parker should be the top options for Tua. He's only, 5,000 on DraftKings, and the Jets have allowed the 8th most fantasy points to tight ends. He had 5 catches for 50 yards on 6 targets 3 weeks ago. He should be able to outdo that number this week, especially with Waddle out if he's out. And he was actually the one, I guess, now that I look at this, it was the second best matchup advantage on the slate. So, and projected to be the 3rd highest scoring tight end. So good value there at 5,000 for Mike Gesicki.
Yeah, I like him as well, especially if Waddle is out. Now, if you want to pivot, save $100 and get, I think, probably a little bit lower ownership, Dalton Schultz is an option. And I think it's a potential bounce back spot for him. His numbers have been down a little bit with Gallup back. Only 3 targets last week, 1 catch. And it's a middle of the road matchup against the Giants. But they're 10.5-point favorites. And, he's a guy who can kind of quietly get 5 or 6 catches, 70 or 80 yards and a score, and easily pay off that price tag if he has one of his better games. So that's really a kind of a bounce back type GPP play. But I do feel a little bit safer in that price range with Gesicki.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have one more for us?
Yeah. Noah Fant, he's 4,400 on DraftKings, going up against the same Bengals defense that Kittle just terrorized last week. They've allowed the 10th most fantasy points to tight ends, the Bengals have. So this is a favorable matchup, and then once again, a nice value play at only 4,400 on DraftKings. So,
Okay. All right. Well, let's finish up with some defenses here to get these rosters filled out. Why don't you go first for us there?
yeah. So when I was looking at the DraftKings defenses, it just jumped out to me where Buffalo was priced 3,100. They're 4,900 on FanDuel. They're the second most expensive defense over there. So for them to be one of the cheaper ones on Buffalo, that just immediately jumps out to me as it's probably going to be a strong play and probably very popular for that reason. But they're going up against Carolina, who ranked 24th in scoring at 19.8 points per game. And I think, coming off of a close loss in overtime to Tampa, the Bills will come out fired up in front of the Bills Mafia. And, at 3,100, that's just a steal for me on DraftKings.
Yeah, I really like that price as well. It jumped out at me. No CMC, strong value there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I also like a couple of the blue bloods, if you will, the pay up options here. Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
they're chalky, but in the NFL, you can go with a few chalky plays,
Right,
and still do quite well. And look at Detroit right now with the way that they've been ravaged by injuries. I mean, their two lead backs are out, Swift and Jamal Williams, and then now Hawkinson's out. I mean, that's most of their offense right there. It's all backups across the board: wide receivers, tight ends, running backs.
Yeah.
Denver just dominated them last week. They're now 30th in points, 26th in yards. So again, I think it'll be a pretty chalky kind of a cash game play, but I'll have plenty of exposure to the Arizona defense.
Yeah.
All right, how about one more option here?
Yeah, for a punt play, you could look at Jacksonville just because they're going up against the worst offense in the NFL. Houston has just struggled all year to score. They score about 13 points a game, and Jacksonville is going to be, just an emotional high, I think, coming out from the shadow of Urban Meyer. I feel like he was really bringing them down. So I think that they're going to play well on both sides of the ball this week. And, we did see them play against a good Buffalo team, and they held them to 6 points. So it's not completely out of the question that they could, shut down a team like Houston.
Yep, certainly makes sense. One more for me here, Cowboys. 3,600, another pay up option against the Giants. They are 28th in points, 25th in yards, and they're dealing with some backups and injuries. Looking like Glennon again, or Fromm, or some mixture of the two. Shepard's questionable. They're just in complete disarray. So, the Cowboys, I mean, just they stepped up when healthy last week against Washington. They're making big plays. So they're on a roll there defensively. So that's another place I want to look.
Yeah. What's the weather looking like? Do you know for Sunday?
There's going to be some snow in the Northeast.
Okay.
We're recording this on Friday night, so I like to look on Saturday, 24 hours ahead, and try to get the updated projections. But yeah, if we've got some weather there, that'll turn me on to Dallas even more.
Right. Yep. Especially in the windy city of the Meadowlands. So.
Yep. All right, great. Well, there's the Main Slate podcast for you this week. Looking forward to getting after it. Any questions for us, reach out to us on Twitter at DFS Coach Talk, and make sure to check out our primetime podcast. That'll post later this weekend for some primetime action showdown slates. We're going to have a lot of showdown slates in the next couple of weeks in the NFL. Right. And so that's another reason to join, because we do all of those lineups for our members. Same thing, cash lineups, GPP lineups, and then the core on DraftKings for GPP and cash contests. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Excellent work, Josh. And on behalf of the entire DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hanson. We'll see you next time as we look to crush it in DFS.